So thank you, AWS, and thank you, partners and dear customers. Right? It's always a pleasure to be here in AWS Partner Conference and to be able to share with you some of the items that Intel has been going through. Right? So without further ado, I'm just going to run into some of the areas that we are seeing. I'm a solution architect. I reach out to enterprise customers all around the region. So we find that there are some things, some key learnings resonate a whole lot with the keynote you just came from, right? So AWS is at the forefront of computing. So we'll share a number of these areas that we are seeing today. Okay, so in terms of where the 2015, right? We are in the year 2015. There's a transformation that's happening out here. You are seeing the various vertical, the usage model, energy, retail, smart cities is coming along. Singapore is a smart nation initiatives, healthcare, right? Finance, transport. There are sectoral transformation that's happening. And on the tectonic shift on the IT part, we are seeing security, cloud, big data, Internet of Things, all this happening all at the same time, right? So there are challenges in which we are looking into. So one area that has been called out earlier in the conference, we talk about S3. We talk about the ability to have scalable data sets, right? Data deluge has arrived. All of us, we are encountering a growth of data. In the low percentage, year on year, we are talking about 30 to 40%. But as you heard from AWS, right, it could go as high as 100% year on year type of figures. 7.5 zettabytes, 3 times the amount of data. 90% of the data has been created in the last 2 years. And in terms of statistics, a smart city project, 200 petabytes. That's huge, right? And when we look into the devices that people are carrying, it is generating more and more device data that as we go along. So sensors, your personal device, which is also considered a smart sensor, is driving the growth in the data. And then as you go into enterprise, some clear trends are happening. I used to work in Intel IT. I managed the cloud computing part of it at some point and also managed the network part of it, right? Within Intel, we are looking into big data, cloud, HPC, all happening at the same time. But in terms of statistics on the industry, 6% of enterprise makes decision. So that's still low, right? But it's growing. 9% of enterprise workload reside in public cloud. And we'll talk a bit about that. 12% of manufacturing, US manufacturing, use HPC clusters. So it has been known that even as we eat the humble potato chip, that is using a HPC cluster to figure out the flow on the frying time and get to a perfect potato chip. This is how ordinary manufacturing has become to derive some of the sophisticated technology in order to implement it, right? This is a chart that we flash out a number of times in some of our conferences. You are finding that things times data, you are getting some of the value in there. And what we like to highlight is the insights that you are getting. And that insights is what is leading to revenue growth, cost savings, and margin gain for the business that you are running, right? So the key among here is how do I extract it from all the data sources that I'm having? So I heard a term used in the keynote, right? Perish if we don't innovate fast enough. We have the same theme. Learn or perish, make data-driven decision, have my decisions faster than my competition, right? And in terms of execution, what makes one company over another? Why do we buy? Because they innovate, they have a better idea, and they can implement it fast enough. In many cases, when we are discussing with companies, the very important thing is that I should not be worrying too much about security. I should not be worrying too much about my IT infrastructure. Let the professionals take care of it. What should I be concerned about? I should be concerned about insights. How do I get the next 20 customers, the next 1,000 customers, the next 1 million customers? How do I have algorithms the big data insights in order to achieve that, right? So that is what companies are going forth and saying, what is my core focus? Okay, so cloud growth drivers. So you find that in terms of some of these numbers, there's the business and the consumer growth, some interesting statistics, and how it's driving the CPU volume from the Intel perspective. Smartphones, 400 devices equates to one server. That's what we are seeing, right? Medical wearable devices, we are seeing the healthcare segment, the smartwatch, many telehealth opportunities coming in, 100 devices equal one server, right? And if you're in the manufacturing space, your connected office tools, factory tools, those are the ones that 100 of them drives another server. So it's growing, right? And digital signage. Today's digital signage, as you come in, is no longer a dumb signage. There's intelligence that's built in. It's able to direct you. It's able to predict whether I'm male, female, what's my age group, what's my interest, right? So there are capabilities that are being built in there that is driving both compute as well as the storage element. So in terms of this spiral that is going out, the challenge in a lot of our companies and also presents us an opportunity is that as we discover new services, that's interesting, that's personal to me, right? And then as I come in, I figure out that there might be a separate usage model that's happening. The second usage model will drive more services as we come along, more devices that provides that service. So you find that services, devices keeps growing for that purpose. It keeps spiraling up because of different usage model. I was in the train this morning, right? As I figured that a number of you guys might be in there as well. The thing is that a lot of us use smartphone devices. I do take public transport as well, buses to work. I'm interested in the bus route that is personal to me, right? So as we go along that front, you'll find that devices are getting to the point where I can get the information that only I am interested in. And how do you derive it from services that comes along? That's the key and the crux of the matter. And that's where AWS, that's where Intel goes along in order to drive this computing model. In terms of the CEO, CFO expectations, so many of us comes from an environment where we are talking about always-on availability, extreme flexibility, and service agility, right? If we are driving a retail sales promotion, we want to make sure that at the point where we start the entire program, the compute availability is available to us. Customers who are entering in their orders should be able to be served up immediately, right? So that service agility and having that ability to meet the scalability expectation. Public cloud economics. So internally, as we are in enterprises, we do have costs that we are managing towards. And there is concern, as usual, with regards to new places of innovation. And how do our service compare with what's available to what the public light cloud economics provides, right? So that's a demand on the top management. Compliant to regulatory requirements. So this is another area in which is an expectation. And the business expectation, you find on the right-hand side, they are consumer-like, tech-savvy, outside alternatives. Those are key areas that folks are evaluating. So the expectation is reaching that level of expertise while at the same time providing the consumer-like items that we come and grow and love with our personal devices. So IT is changing. There's a period of transformation where we talk about automation, right? So we go through productivity cycle, we go through cost reduction cycle. So these are the two earlier phases. And now where we are looking into is rapid service delivery. So you saw on the video earlier, there are three main areas that we look into as we talk about compute and what is changing in here, right? So on the network side, we need to provision it a bit faster. So 2 to 3 weeks to provision new service, is that acceptable? Can we be faster? Data growth is happening, right? So 40% growth, 90% of it is unstructured. So how do you manage that unstructured data? And average server utilization, less than 50%. So we do poll and figure out where's the compute usage that's happening. So despite what has been happening in virtualization, the compute utilization per server is roughly around 50% generally. So that's where software-defined infrastructure, composable type of resources kicked in, right? I think that's when you find that as you deal with your compute storage and network, it is under a resource pool, it is being orchestrated, and as part of the orchestration, you have the flexibility to move all your resources as you go along. So Intel is working along this space in order to implement various of this all into the perspective of our partners coming out with the architecture. So the communication comes back from our partners to highlight that, hey, our customers saying that this is what they require. So if I have 2 units of compute, 10 units of storage, 5 units of network, that could be my starting point. When I want to up my compute because of my major sales event that is happening, I can multiply that by 1,000 times. It should turn on as a flick of the button. My press, I need more compute, 1,000 times more. I should be able to orchestrate that through my application seamlessly. So automated, intelligent provisioning, scalable, highly available and efficient infrastructure. So that's what we are looking at. So in many aspects as we go in, right, you find that a video talks through some elements of the software-defined infrastructure for the data centers. So where we are focusing is RealTime Enterprise with full data center orchestration, open standards. You don't want something that's locked in, right? And you should be able to pick and choose the options that you are looking at. It is based on industry standard servers. Optimized resource provisioning. So that's what we are looking at. And it provides management and service assurance. So from the SLA perspective, that is what you have been looked into. You figure that this is a response time that you require as a result of the various resource pool that we are getting, right? And you can see on the top end, the technology trends are driving it. When we are talking about scalable, highly available, you heard about machine learning, IoT, all this is coming pretty rapidly. And how do I manage that, right? You need an infrastructure that is able to serve out in order to support your applications. When your application change, you need to be able to dial down as well, right? So it works both ways, up and down. So a number of us comes from different industries, but when we look into this chart over here, you'll find that it doesn't, it's probably common across industry in a very generic sense. You will have a back office where you have the system of records. You have some areas where you are looking into a system of differentiation. And there are areas right at the top, right? We are saying that there are some applications that we need to go faster. We want to go faster. We need to have a development area for my team in order to work on. So these are the areas that as we break down, you figure out where's the area you can go a bit faster, what are the areas, the data that you have to protect, and how best in order to deal with it. But every organization, you'll find that there are some predictable needs, and there will be high rate of changes. And why is this important? Because that differentiates what are the type of services that you want, right? I think if we are bought into The public cloud, as AWS highlighted, good for you. They are the experts at security, the scalability, the machine-to-machine learning, the MySQL, which is open source and able to be orchestrated in a very seamless fashion. They are the experts in it, right? But if you are thinking of how do I move into a public cloud, look in terms of some of this differentiation, take that jump in that innovation piece of it. That's the area that most organizations move first. Okay, and as you go into this pressure to reduce costs, right? This area, I think, every organization have a need in order to figure out how do I move a bit faster. And the strategy is to invest in that, both considering the CapEx and the OpEx of it, right? So shorten the time to deployment and having some secured deployment is key among here. Service on demand, you can call upon it. It is available to you. In some organizations, and I think you heard that in the keynote as well, is that there could be cases where my procurement is taking about 2 months before the approval comes in, right? So there's some process that I need to go through. And then on the IT side, we have the capacity planning, right? So as I plan for my capacity, it's a process that I need to tie in with my budget cycle. So the pieces in dealing with this matter is actually some of the challenges that some of the individual companies, folks have encountered. And that's why if you look into an option as what AWS is highlighting, they are able to move a bit very much faster than what the competition is able to offer you. So it's one of your major considerations. Networking for the cloud. I think if you look into some of the areas that folks have been working on, networking and software-defined networking is coming along the same front, right? I have a load balancer. I have my firewall. I have my various appliances. I need to configure my ACLs as I put in a new application. Those are step-by-step areas, right? And if you think about it, I need to make provisions in terms of capacity planning, in terms of the process in order to orchestrate it. Are we at the point where I click my application, this is what I require, this is the type of service I require, at the back end is automatically provisioning. Software-defined networking is the way to go, right? Where the systems orchestrate the network. So 1 hour in order to set it up. I guess from a standpoint, if you compare that with what each individual organization goes through in order to set up a network, that's actually a tremendous improvement. Intel IT, for example, went through the same planning process in order to get through its software-defined networking to work in that 1 hour time frame. Cloud economics. So when we talk about OpEx and CapEx, it's very important to look at your total cost of computing. Many of us in the IT organizations, we look in terms of our IT infrastructure. We forget about the power that consumes power as well, right? Who pays for it? Maybe the corporate services group that's down the hallway pays for it. So when you are comparing, you need apples to apples type of comparison. So what's the VM, the number of web transactions, my storage capacity, my Hadoop. So power cooling, distribution, my networking, my servers, all this makes up all your OpEx and CapEx spending. So Intel and AWS has a long-standing partnership. I'm going to go through one or two areas that we looked into, right? So from an Intel standpoint, we invest into the data center technologies on a very regular basis. And you can see that this is a portfolio of the processor within the Intel environment, right? It goes from Xeon 5, the Core i5, and the Atom. So there's a wide range of processor makes and SKUs, we call them, for the different workloads that you are having. And then from server network storage and software, we have assets reference architecture. We work very closely with the AWS team in order to make this work in a flawless fashion, right? And it's being targeted overall at various type of vertical industries. For example, towards the communication industry, we do have ingredients in the silicon in order to accelerate packet processing. So those are areas in which, as part of the silicon, you get improvement. A lot of our workloads today rely on encryption. So as part of the silicon, we incorporate AES-NI, all right? New instruction sets for the silicon encryption capability. So if you are doing hashing algorithms, you are doing encrypt and decrypt, it speeds up tremendously when you do it in hardware. And that goodness gets into the AWS setup. Gordon Moore came out with a law which is 50 years old. I think if you go into Straits Times on Sunday, there was a very nice article on Moore's law. So number of transistors in a chip will double every 24 months, right? So we have on this tick-tock cadence on a regular interval. So now we are into the Ivy Bridge, Haswell, and I just built it up, and then we are going on to the Broadwell, right? So the highest performing EC2 instance, the C4, is on the Haswell 22 nanometer, right? So this cadence continues to serve us very well. We partner very closely. Every time we launch our roadmap, the day we launch a roadmap, it's available in AWS. All right, so that's what happened to the C4. In last September, Diane Bryan, head of our data center division, was on stage together with AWS in order to launch our roadmap for the Haswell 22 nanometer. So in terms of this, okay, I won't go through this. It touches upon what I said. There's a bit more write-up within the C4. It's the highest performing EC2 instance, and you literally require it because of the workload that is in there. And it has been optimized for the C4 instance, the EC2 instance, right? Okay, and it's not just compute. You'll find that storage, high I/O requirements comes into play. You'll find that SSD is just equally as important. So one of the interesting part is that every time when one of these areas in which you are coming to look for performance, that's where the two groups of engineers gets together in order to figure out which of the benchmark works well, what type of workload, what type of characteristics we are looking into. Is it memory bound? Is it I/O bound? Is it compute bound, right? If it's I/O bound, what type of packets are we looking at? Small bursty type of traffic? Or is it large packets? And how do we optimize it? So you get various options that has been built in, pre-engineered for your usage. Right, when SSD came into play, one of the items is that the cache acceleration layer is all the instances that you are seeing from AWS is on the Intel SSD, all right? So you'll find that the capability speeds out your latency in terms of all the traffic that is in there. And like what I highlighted in terms of the goodness, there are some of the technologies in there. On the left-hand side, by no means is an exhaustive list. There are a few more that can be called out, but these are the ones that we like to highlight with regards to some of the acceleration that we are seeing. Advanced vector extensions, right? So as we get into usage models, right? You heard from the keynote, there's a range of partners, many different partners across all industries. This is one of them, Novartis, right? For the end user benefit, it reduced costs by choosing the premium instance, up to 65 cost reduction, and it's 52% decrease in the runtime. So it's a bit counterintuitive, right? You choose the highest performing instance, I'm paying more, but at the same time, you find that what they want is higher performing time to market, right? So we are competing. We are in industries that I need to be at market. If I'm running a workload, if I can save that 52% in my runtime, I can run a few more jobs. So it is extremely important. So what are customers doing? There are a couple of white papers that is out there. So there are many industries that's out there. The interesting one is on NASA. So the Mars rovers, for those who have been following that was also on Intel Wind River Linux, hosted on AWS, as NASA needs the compute power in order to process it, right? And it cuts across all industries, calculates the statistics, equivalent Hungry Go Where site, Yelp, right? To make predictive requirements for customers who are going into that site. So take a look into it. There are many solutions that's up there. How in terms of insights, big data, the individual companies have the capabilities in order to leapfrog the competition. So there are use cases that we are seeing in cloud, HPC, and big data, right? So that in terms of the end game, right, it's not just the processor, it's not just the application, it's how do I do it faster, how do I do it better? So key takeaways from here, right? Transformation to cloud is critical. So you find that this is a constant that is happening right now. So we want to speed time out to value. Service on demand, turn IT from business support to a valued partner. It is extremely important that your organization view the IT team as a valued partner. We are going into customers together. We are sharing what we can perform for them, right? The cloud infrastructure enables us to seamlessly integrate, connect all the pools of resources. You don't want your pool of resources to lie idle. You must have the capability in order to address it, to utilize what is available. And AWS, in their way of orchestrating, is going along that front in order to give you the cost-optimized cost with regards to running it. And then between Intel and AWS, we continue to partner on a very regular basis, continue to engineer the best available instance, right, in order for you to take advantage of the cloud. So with this, thank you.